Undercover cop Mike had spent months posing as an eager home buyer looking for a cheap property in this neighborhood. The case was almost closed when he saw the notice. His neighbor had been arrested after forging his HOA fine payments. So why was she now staring at him from behind the bars? How did she get there? And what had she done? Well, let's start at the beginning. It all started when undercover cop Mike moved into this neighborhood. He wanted to buy a house here because the housing prices had skyrocketed, and he needed to know how it was possible that this neighborhood seemed so wealthy but had such high property prices. While going over the paperwork, he learned that there was a monthly homeowners association fee. It was pretty expensive, but Mike didn't mind paying it because it included lawn maintenance, security patrols, and snow removal. Plus, the other houses were worth hundreds of thousands of dollars more than his, so he figured they must have good reason to pay it. So far, the HOA fees were only a small part of his expenses, but soon his mailbox would start filling up with bills. His first bill was for $900, and the due date was only a few days away. But before he could even think about paying it, another bill came through his mailbox, this time for $750 and due in 3 days. To say Mike was confused was an understatement. He'd never seen anything like this before. It was definitely odd, but it wasn't enough for him to suspect any fraud just yet. So he decided to do some research and see if anyone else had complaints about their HOA. He went around the neighborhood asking question after question, but nobody seemed to know anything about it. Some claimed they didn't pay any fees. Others said they couldn't complain since the neighborhood was perfect. But as soon as Mike turned toward his neighbor's house, things took a wild turn. Just then, they called the police. She tried to keep a straight face, but her eyes betrayed her. She was lying. Mike knew it. They both knew it. Even the officers knew it. But they played along anyway. As they searched the house, Mike noticed something very interesting. The walls were covered in pictures of his neighbors, all of them smiling brightly, except for one woman who looked guilty and kept looking down. It was clearly her. That was his neighbor. Why did she seem so guilty? The officer found nothing incriminating during the search, and soon everyone was called back into the living room. The tension was thick as they explained that they hadn't found anything incriminating, and that Mrs. Wilson was free to go. She left without saying a word, but not before giving Mike a warning look. This was very suspicious. Why had she been so sure the police would find something in her house? What was she hiding? And why? A few days later, Mike received a letter that read, "We regret to inform you that your application has been denied." He was rejected without getting a chance to explain himself. The HOA didn't even tell him what he had allegedly done wrong. He suspected his neighbor had something to do with it. But what could he possibly have done? He had only asked his neighbors questions about their HOA, and no one else seemed to have a problem with it. He was furious. Meanwhile, Mrs. Wilson was staring at her computer screen. She was horrified. Her son had logged onto her account and made a large transfer. She knew it was only a matter of time until the police came knocking again. She had worked hard to earn her money, and she would be damned if she let some punk kid blow it all. As the sun began to set, a shadow loomed over Mike's door. It was the police. He opened the door to find 2 officers. "Mrs. Wilson asked us to come talk to you," one of the officers said. "She's worried about you." Before Mike could ask any questions, the officers handcuffed him and escorted him out of his house. When they arrived at the station, they put him in a room to wait for questioning. But before long, the door opened, and a woman walked in. It was his neighbor. "I want to apologize for the misunderstanding," she said. "I didn't mean to get you in trouble with the police. I was just looking out for you. You see, the HOA isn't a charity organization. We have bylaws that must be followed. When you moved in, You signed an agreement to abide by these rules. But instead of following the rules, you were busy breaking them. You violated the privacy rights of the residents by asking too many questions about the HOA and recording our conversations. You should have respected our privacy instead of trying to meddle in our business. If you don't like living in this neighborhood, I suggest you move as soon as possible. After she left, the questioning began. Mike was desperate to clear his name, but no one believed him. They thought he was lying. No one would listen to his side of the story. And as the hours passed, he felt hopeless. It was clear they didn't believe him, and they probably never would. His only hope was to prove them wrong. With a determined look on his face, he called the local newspaper to expose the HOA. He told them everything he knew about the neighborhood and the HOA. And to his surprise, they were willing to investigate. Within days, the newspaper had published an article detailing everything Mike had told them. The backlash was immediate. People were outraged to learn that their trusted HOA had been exploiting them for so long. The HOA president resigned in disgrace, and a new election was held. Mike was elected president and immediately got to work fixing the problems that had been plaguing the neighborhood for years. One of the first things he did was to review the HOA's financial records. He wanted to make sure they were being used properly. But what he found shocked him. The HOA had been embezzling money from the members. They had been using the money to pay for lavish parties and expensive gifts for themselves. And when confronted, they had lied about it. They had denied wrongdoing and tried to cover up the evidence. He wasn't alone in his discovery. Other members of the HOA had noticed the missing funds, and they wanted answers. They demanded that the HOA board members explain where the money had gone, but the board members refused to cooperate. They wouldn't answer any questions, and they tried to shut down the investigation. But Mike wasn't having it. He gathered the other members of the HOA, and together they voted to remove the board members from office. They then hired an accountant to investigate the HOA's finances. The accountant uncovered a shocking amount of fraud. The HOA had been stealing from its members for years, and now Mike wanted justice. He contacted the police and told them what he had found. The police launched an investigation, and soon the HOA members responsible were arrested. They were charged with theft and fraud. And when they appeared in court, they were forced to pay back the stolen money. In the end, Mike was able to restore order to the HOA. He fixed the financial problems and made sure the members were no longer being exploited. He had brought justice to the neighborhood, and he had done it all by simply asking questions. That was crazy. But what do you think? Leave it in the comments below. Also, subscribe for more amazing stories.